let's learn about Pashto verbs and phrase structure by playing around with the LingDocs Pashto Dictionary. Now, Pashto is a bit difficult because there are actually 3 different phrase structures that we have to follow depending on what type of verb we're using. There's one for intransitive verbs, there's one for transitive verbs that are not in the past tense, and there's another one for transitive verbs that are in the past tense. So let's see what this looks like. If we search for a word like rasidal, which is to arrive, it's an intransitive verb because there's no object. It's just someone arriving. Here's our roots and stems we're going to use, and now we just have to choose a subject to build phrases with it. So let's say I am arriving, zarasigam, like this. So the subject is what we will call the king of the phrase. So we have a little crown icon here. So when we change the subject will be controlling the verb. That's what it means to be the king of the phrase, is to control the verb. So if I say you arrive, terasigi, or if I say we arrive, mungrasigu, like that. So we are taking with the present tense, we are taking the imperfective stem, like that, and we are adding the present verb ending. And you can look in the grammar to see what those are. So we have a subject which is not inflecting or doing anything weird. It's just hanging out, and it is controlling the verb. Same thing in the past tense. When we talk with intransitive verbs, we still have the past tense. The subject is still the king, and it's still controlling the verb. Zaurasidalam. It's just now we're using the root here, right there, instead of the stem. So zaurasidalam. If I say we arrived, mung urasidalu or mung urasidu, and the same thing. So with the intransitive verbs, you just have a subject, which is king, and the king is the one that controls the verb. That's it. Things get a bit more difficult, a bit more challenging when we start looking at transitive verbs. So let's look at lidal, to see. So here's our roots and stems we're going to use. And now, because we're having a transitive verb, we have to choose an object as well. So let's say I see you. We're in the present tense, zatawinam. Okay, so let's look at the phrase structure. We have a subject, which is still the king of the sentence, so the subject is still controlling the verb, and we have an object, which we're going to call a servant. That's that little icon there. So the object is not controlling the verb. So when I change the subject, the verb's going to change. If I say we see you, mung tawinu. Or if I say he sees you, haratawini. If I change object, it doesn't change the verb. If I say he sees them, harahawiwini, doesn't change the verb. The subject is the one that controls the verb. Zahawiwinum, I see them. The other thing we'll notice is that if we say I see you, zatawinum. If I say he sees me, haramawini. So here, the object is inflecting, but not always. If I say I see her, zaharawinam. I don't say zaharewinam. So this is interesting. With the transitive verbs, in the non-past tense, in present tense or when we're not in the past tense, the object will not inflect unless it is a first and second person pronoun. Look, I see you, zatawinam. It inflects. If I see let's say a noun, if we say sare, I see the man, zasarewinam. That does not inflect. If I see the children, let's make it plural, zamashuman winam, then that does not inflect. Like that. So we have a subject, which is the king of the sentence, and we have an object, which is a servant, and the subject doesn't inflect. The object only inflects when it is first or second person pronoun. So that's the phrase structure for a transitive verb not in the past tense. But when we go to the past tense, things are going to change. Watch this. Look, ma ta zatawinam. But as soon as I switch, let's change this around a little bit. Let's say you see me. Ta ma wini, right? You see me. So that is in the present tense. But when we go to the past tense, we're going to run into our third phrase structure. It's going to change like crazy. Check this out. Ta za wulidalam. So now we're in the past tense saying you saw me. This feels like the sentence just totally flipped around, like as if the subject and the object flipped around. So it says ta za wulidalam. What happened here? So the object became the king of the sentence. When we're in the past tense with transitive verbs, the object is the king of the sentence. And now the subject is the servant. So we can change a subject. It's not going to change the verb. Hara zawulidalam. Not he saw me, or they saw me. Harwi zawulidalam. The object is the thing that's controlling the verb. So if I say they saw you, harwi tawulidale, or harwi tawulide. The object is the king of the sentence now. And this is really tricky for people who are learning Pashto, and this is what we call ergative alignment, to use a technical grammar term. So what's the other thing we're noticing here? If I say, let's say, I saw you, ma ta wulidale. So we have the subject is always inflecting. If I say she saw you, hare ta wulidale. She saw you. If the subject is a noun and it's like, say, the man saw you, sare sari ta wulidale. Or if the woman saw you, khaza khazi ta wulidale. If the women saw you, then it's going to be khazo ta wulidale. So here in this phrase structure, we have a subject as the servant, and the subject inflects. And we have an object, which is a king, and the object does not inflect, but the object controls the verb. So let's review the three types of phrase structures that we saw. We have, with the intransitive verbs, the subject is the king of the sentence, and the subject doesn't inflect. The subject controls the verb. With transitive verbs, if they're not in the past tense, we have a subject, which is still the king of the sentence. It does not inflect. And then we have an object, which is the servant, and the object doesn't inflect unless it's a first or second person pronoun. And in the past tense with transitive verbs, our third structure, we have the subject as the servant of the sentence, and the subject will always inflect. And we have an object, which is the king of the sentence. And so the object is now controlling the verb, and the object will not inflect. So the key to speaking Pashto properly is you have to learn how to use each one of these phrase structures depending on what type of verb you're using. And this takes a lot of practice. Saying especially the transitive past tense sentences can feel like riding a backwards bicycle. It's very tricky, takes a lot of practice. The other thing to notice about this is that you can change the order of the subject and the object. They can swap places like that. So you could say ta khazi wulidale, the woman saw you, or you could say khazi ta wulidale. It doesn't matter. Same thing with the present tense. If I say khaza ta wini, you can say ta khaza wini. They might change places in the sentence, but the roles of servant and king still stay the same.